Hey there, it's Dave Lambert for another episode of Oxygen TV. So just following on from last week's episode that we covered regarding the squat, we're just going to give you some techniques and tips to help you try and improve. So one of the things we went over last week with all the different squats that we went over was range of motion. Okay, so trying to get that 90-degree bend in the knee joint, or another way to describe it is trying to get the thighs parallel to the floor. Okay, so trying to get that deep squat position. If you're not able to get that deep position that you need and that you'd like to get, a lot of the time it's due to tight muscles in and around the knees and hip joint. So what we're going to do today is use a couple of tools to loosen up all the key areas, and we'll see how that goes improving your squats. Okay, so there's 6 main areas that we wanted to cover: the quads, the muscles that run down the front of your thighs, the hamstrings that run down the back of the thighs. We've got a muscle at the top of your hip called your TFL, or tensor fascia latae, not a cafe latte. TFL, if that gets tight, that often leads to a tight IT band or ITB. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of that before. A lot of people that do a lot of running end up with tight IT bands, then knee pain, and it results in a painful process to try and rehabilitate it. So if we can keep that loose and flexible, and we don't want it getting too tight, you're going to be able to stay healthy and keep functioning, keep running, doing all the things that you love. 2 other areas that often get tight and lead to knee pain and restrictions are back here on the calf muscle, and then one that a lot of people complain of with shin splints is the pain that runs down the front of their shins, and that's a muscle called your Tibialis anterior. Okay, so we're going to go over a couple of quick strategies to try and loosen up all those areas. We'll see how that improves your squats. So, the first thing we're going to do is use this little tool called the foam roller. Okay, so if we start with that funky TFL muscle, that one on the hip that I told you about, it's going to be quite a limited range of motion. We get the roller right on the edge of your glutes. Okay, so this is the bony point in my hip here. It's quite a limited range of motion. You can see my top leg is planted. Bottom leg that I've got on the roller is off the ground. So you probably want to roll back and forth, putting a bit of pressure on that TFL on the edge of the hip. Do that for about 30 to 60 seconds. Now once you've done that, that'll help you with the next one, the IT band, which runs from the TFL at the top, the side of the hip, all the way down the thigh to the side of the kneecap. Okay, so what we're going to do is just lift up, roll that about halfway down the thigh, and we're going to do this in 2 stages. Okay, so from half or mid-thigh position, rolling back towards the hip. So the top half of that IT band. Now for a lot of people, this is going to be very uncomfortable. They're quite tight in that IT band already, and if that's the case, that's an indication that you need to do it. You need to get regular massage, you need to stretch, you need to try and roll out that tightness in the band by doing exercises like this. So we'd give that about 30 to 60 seconds from the mid-thigh to the hip. Then we'd just lift up, roll it right down to the knee joint, and we roll from the knee to the mid-thigh position. Okay, so that's splitting the IT band into two sort of sections. Okay, if that's okay for you and it's not too uncomfortable, what you can do to advance it is get it on that mid-thigh position, and rather than the top leg being planted, you're resting on the forearm again, top leg goes up, bottom leg goes up, and all your body weight is going to roll across that foam roller. Now again, that'll be very, very uncomfortable for a lot of people, and I've got to tell you, it's not too pleasant right now for me, but I can tolerate it just. Okay, so we'd give that 30 to 60 seconds, just rolling the length of the IT band and trying to loosen up. So there's 3 of them. One we're going to cover next is for the quads, down the muscles down the front of the thighs. Okay, so we'd get the roller about halfway along the thighs, and we want to roll from the groin right along. So we're in a plank position type thing, from the kneecaps right up to the groin. Going the full length of those quad muscles. Now if you want to advance this one, what you can do is place the quads in a stretched position. So you'd bend the knees, flick those feet up behind you, and that's going to increase the intensity of the quads while you foam roll it. That's a bit tighter, I can feel that already. Okay, so there's another one for the quads. Give that about 30 to 60 seconds. We'd also want to roll the hamstrings. So you actually just sit down on the roller. I've got my butt just hanging off the edge. I'm going to support my weight on my hands and my fingers. The feet lift up, and I'm going to try and roll from the kneecap to the butt, or back of the kneecap, rolling right along the length of the hamstrings. Sometimes you might have to maneuver yourself around to try and find the right spot for you, but it's a good one. Another way to loosen up the hamstrings, a little less pressure on the knee joint. An extension of that is to just sit down, push it up under the calves, so it's just right on the belly of your calf muscle. Again, just rolling, supporting your weight on your hands. If you do want to make this one or the previous one, the hamstring stretch, a bit harder, sorry, I should say the hamstring roll, a little bit harder, what you can do is just take a seat, put one leg on top of the other one, and put all your weight on that bottom leg. So at the moment I'm rolling the top calf muscle, the gastrocnemius. That's that big fatter one at the top of the lower leg. This one here. You can also roll the soleus, which is the lower calf muscle. So again, pretty limited range of motion from the heel about halfway up the quad, halfway up the lower leg. So that's your lower calf muscle, your soleus. There's probably one more that I want to cover, and that's improving, loosening up that tibialis anterior muscle, that front shin muscle that we talked about. Not going to use the roller for that. We're actually going to use a good old tennis ball. So you put your foot on a step, you find that bony part that runs right down the middle of the shin, and just get the ball on the outside of that bony part. Okay, so all you got to do is put a bit of pressure on the ball. These are quite limited. You're not going to roll it like the full length of your leg, but probably about a third to half the length of your leg. Putting a bit of pressure on it, rolling it in, and getting that tibialis anterior loosened up. Give that about 30 seconds, stop, move it down, get it in that middle third of the muscle as well. Give that 30 or 60 seconds, and then you can just finish off with that pretty small area just to the bottom of the lower leg as well. Okay, so putting a good amount of pressure. But if you can cover some of those exercises, it's going to loosen up all those muscles and bands in and around the hip and the knees. It's going to improve your range of motion and your ability to squat better. So that's about it that I have for you this week on Oxygen TV. I'll see you next week.